The world isn't driven by headlines. It's shaped by power, strategy, and national interests. Welcome to Geopolitics Explainer. Understand the world beyond the headlines.
When we look at the United Nations Assembly Hall, we expect to see a world governed by diplomacy, international law, and shared goals. Yet, global politics remains consistently defined by aggressive power plays and conflict. Early critics, like British historian E.H. Carr, looked at the popular belief in perpetual peace and labeled it a dangerous form of utopianism. The 20th century proved his point. The devastation in the trenches of World War I shattered the illusion that modern diplomacy could easily tame state aggression. In the wake of that violence, a highly pragmatic perspective took hold: realism. It strips away all moralizing to view international relations as a mechanical, uncompromising struggle for power. To actually decode global state behavior, you have to understand realism's three foundational laws: statism, self-help, and the security dilemma. The first pillar is statism. In the realist worldview, international organizations, charities, and massive corporations are essentially irrelevant. The nation-state is the supreme, solitary authority on the global stage. Scholar Arnold Wolfers described this using a billiard table model. Nations are solid, opaque spheres, constantly crashing into one another, completely devoid of internal moral considerations. This deeply cynical view traces its intellectual roots back to ancient Greece, where the historian Thucydides documented the raw power politics between Athens and Sparta. Later thinkers like Niccolo Machiavelli and Hans Morgenthau cemented this as classical realism. They argued that human beings are biologically wired to be ego-driven, which guarantees that the states they build will be ruthless. Under classical realism, because people are naturally selfish, states are naturally selfish. Perpetual peace is a mathematical impossibility. In 1979, a theorist named Kenneth Waltz dismissed human nature from the equation entirely. He introduced neo-realism, arguing that state aggression is actually caused by the mechanical structure of the international system itself. Waltz focused on the concept of global anarchy. In international relations, anarchy doesn't mean chaos in the streets. It simply means there is no global police force to call in an emergency. This anarchic structure forces every nation into the second pillar, a self-help environment. You can only rely on your own capabilities. To survive in a self-help system, a state is forced to maximize its own power and security at all times. Nations don't go to war because their leaders are inherently greedy. They fight because existing in an anarchic system makes it a cold mathematical requirement for survival. This requirement for survival triggers a tragic irony, leading to the final pillar, the security dilemma. Imagine State A builds up its military purely for self-defense. Because there is no global authority to trust, State B has no way to verify their neighbor's true intentions. Terrified by this new buildup, State B expands their own military. State A sees this reaction as an immediate threat, and the cycle repeats. We saw this spiral clearly during the Cold War. As the Soviet Union paraded massive intercontinental missiles through Red Square, the United States built up its own nuclear deterrent in direct response. The security dilemma proves how the rational, defensive desire for safety mechanically traps nations in a vicious cycle of escalation. Despite its influence, realism has obvious blind spots today. It completely struggles to explain the deep, long-term state integration we see across the European Union. Liberal theorists point to complex interdependence. When nations heavily intertwine their economies through institutions like the World Trade Organization, waging war becomes too expensive to justify. Marxist critics take it a step further. They argue realism is a dangerous conservative ideology. By constantly telling us the world is a violent, anarchic place, it normalizes inequality and prevents any real structural change. Some critics even dismiss the theory as a gigantic optical illusion. Yet, despite the heavy backlash, realism maintains a hegemonic grip on international relations. Treaties are signed and global trade expands, but realism dominates because it exposes the primal, unyielding calculations of fear and survival that still govern the foundation of global politics.
If you found this video valuable, like, subscribe, and turn on notifications. Join Geopolitics Explainer for more insights into international relations and global affairs.